Yeah, do I see how it works? I mean, I've known people that have had their computers confiscated by the cops or DAs, and trying to get those suckers back, a week, a month, a year, sometimes they never, oh, we don't know where it is, it's lost in the system. So can you imagine this idea, when you say confiscation, they mean confiscation. In other words, you guys back there, I don't know, it seemed like 4 or 5 years ago, you took all my farm equipment. You remember that? When we had that storm? You know, oh yeah, I seem to remember that. Well, I'd like it back if you don't mind. Gee, we don't know where that is. We think it might be in Argentina now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I actually have an interview on the record with a Central Texas farmer who said on camera, on the record, that FEMA was calling the farms. This was following Hurricane Katrina. FEMA was calling all the farms and inventorying all their crops, all their seeds, and all their equipment, asking what they had. And he told me that the farmers complied, and they gave them the list. And I said, well, wait a minute, don't you realize FEMA's building a database of all the food you have, even food in the ground that hasn't even been harvested yet? Why do you think they would want such a database? And the answer is, well, yeah, I guess because they want to take it. They want to redistribute it, John. See, they want to reallocate it. So they want to take what's yours and give it to their people and call it, you know, national defense.
Speaking of solutions, the issue of freedom is, to me, the key. In other words, if anything is surviving this country from where it originally was framed in its founding documents, it is that idea of freedom. And I know certainly in the medical area, and I believe it's also true politically, that when you bring up and you force the issue to be the issue of freedom, no matter what the government wants to twist it into, you have a chance, you have a fighting chance. For example, the government says that somebody is forced to take certain medications. You say, wait a minute, are you saying that I have no freedom to decide whether a medicine goes in my body? You have a chance of fighting that way. You have a chance. Yes. And that's why freedom is so vital to be the central issue here.
I think it's crucial, John, that the listeners today assert their constitutional rights, their God-given rights, their natural law rights to have ownership of private property, to have ownership and control over their own bodies, to have the fundamental God-given right to choose what kind of food you want to consume, what kind of medicine you wish to consume, and even as parents, to have the right to control the decisions of what your children drink, what your children get in terms of medicine, what they eat at school in terms of a brown bag lunch. And if you think about it, all of these things are under attack, every one of them. We saw the home gardener under attack in Michigan, that was Julie Bass. We've seen the brown bag lunches made by the parents under attack at schools now, where they have food police that make the kids eat chicken nuggets manufactured out of pink slime instead of the food brought from home made by their parents. We've seen farmers under assault, the Amish farmers, Vernon Hirschberger hauled into court for his raw milk. Every one of these is under attack, including the right to own private property, as we've seen in this executive order. So I'm curious about your thoughts on this, John, but I would say the answer is, it always is, restore the Constitution. Restore the Bill of Rights. It's always the right answer. Ron Paul, Ron Paul, Ron Paul. It's always the right answer.
Yeah, restoring the Constitution, to me, is always the right answer. And part of that solution, by the way, and there are groups around you can find and explore, restore power to smaller units of government, like the states as opposed to the federal government, the counties as opposed to the states, the cities as opposed to the counties, and so on down the line. You can see in the 10th and 11th Amendments to the Constitution where that is explicitly stated in the Reserve Clause and other clause that has to do with freedom being really given back to the states. Now, people will argue about this and say, well, the states are corrupt and they're horrible and they always have been, and therefore we should have the federal government on top of the whole pile. This is absolutely not the case at this point in time. The states at least have a chance. And I can tell you, just briefly, there are a number of states that could put into effect free market practices if they were free from federal control, that would make their states economic bonanzas. I won't get into details here, but it would work in a second. Mike, you were going to say?
Hey, if a state just legalized hemp farming, I'm talking industrial hemp, not even smokable medicinal pot. I'm talking about industrial hemp that you can't even get high on. If a state like even Texas, let's say, if they legalize growing hemp, do you realize the economic abundance of the agricultural sector in Texas? Texas would be a massive exporter of hemp all across the country. Hemp seeds, hemp oils, hemp fibers, hemp textiles. It would be like money raining out of the sky on Texas farmers. So why doesn't Texas legalize hemp, or another state? Hemp grows in much of the country. It's a very abundant crop. It's just one example. There are thousands of these examples where we could restore economic prosperity and restore liberty at the same time.
Absolutely, Mike. And for example, in the area of alternative medicine, there are places where it's much harder to practice than others around the country. Well, if a state like California, for example, decided, look, we're really going to open the door, not just partway, but all the way to alternative practitioners under the mandate of do no harm, which can be easily framed into a law. It's been done in other states.
That's right.
And now, all of a sudden, California becomes the premier place for people who want to, by their own responsibility, to show up and get alternative medical treatments, alternative health treatments. Are you kidding? The economy of California would boom out the top in 6 months.
Absolutely.
And then the idea of these states giving back their rights to the federal government would never happen. Texas, we can't grow hemp anymore. Are you kidding? Never going to happen.
This is the thing. These solutions are right at our fingertips. They're readily available. All these people in Washington parade around like they're trying to figure out how to solve the economy. You know, people at the Federal Reserve and the banks. How do we solve the economy? Legalize freedom. That's how you solve the economic problem. Legalize it. You know, Jonathan Emor wrote a book, Restore the Republic. That's a good read. The intro was written by Ron Paul. It's a very important piece. You know, legalize freedom and abundance naturally follows. But that's exactly why they're crushing liberty, because they don't want people to be free and to be abundant and to be innovative on their own. They're trying to crush the economy and crush freedom at the same time. And folks, if we don't wake up and turn this thing around, I mean, we could very easily be crossing a tipping point very soon where it's too late. So wake the heck up. Restore liberty now, or you may lose it for generations.
And going along with that, Mike, is decentralize. That's the way to restore liberty in many areas, in many fronts. Decentralize the power. Who's got the power now? Well, the federal government does. The federal government, if they don't have the overt power, they have the power of the purse strings, because they can come into a school system or any industry and they can say, hey, we're dangling some money for you here, but if you want the money, you've got to do this. No thanks. We don't want it. No thank you. We don't need it. We're going to take back our own power at the state level, the county level, the city, the town, the village, the individual level.
You know, there's an interesting...
This is a trend.
The metaphor for this, which I'm sure you'll appreciate, John, is that in a human body, when power is decentralized and every cell plays its proper role, you have a healthy, functioning, holistic system. When you have a group of cells that tries to take over power and take over control, you know what that's called? A cancer tumor. What is big government today? An economic cancer tumor. It's the same. The metaphor applies. We have a cancer in our nation. It is called centralized command economy control. And these executive orders that we just talked about further that cancer. We must reverse this cancer and save the patient, which is our republic. We can only do that through holistic decentralization of power, support of the immune system of the nation, which is the people speaking out and saying we demand our rights as guaranteed under the Bill of Rights to restore the republic, restore our liberty, restore our economic abundance. I mean, it's all right there in front of us, John. It's not a mystery. It's a blueprint for liberty. It's right there in front of us if we just grab it. You know what I mean?
You bet, Mike. You bet I do. Absolutely right. When Alex and I were talking the other day in an interview that we did at InfoWars here, we got to the point where it was, you know, these guys who think of themselves and see themselves as masters and controllers, these elites, they're really committing suicide. This is really what they're doing. I mean, underneath it all, that's where they're going. The only problem is that they're tending to drag everybody else along with them. And it's just the analogy that you gave of cancer. That's how they're committing suicide. They're going out there to the point where they're restricting other people's freedom so much that they're destroying themselves in the process, because that's what happens when you try to restrict other people's freedoms beyond a certain point. That's what's going on. And they are suicidal.
Insane. You're right. They're suicidal. They're insane. Alex talks about it all the time. The global elite have pushed too far. They're so insane. I mean, they're sociopathic, insane demons almost from another dimension or something. I say that jokingly, but I mean, they are insane. They're so insane that they're going to destroy us at the same time they destroy themselves, and they don't care. Their quest for power will lead to their own destruction, and they can't see that happening because they're just completely infected with insanity. That's why those of us who are sane, who are rational, who can put the pieces of the puzzle together, who can connect the dots, who can see what's about to happen, we must rise up peacefully and with knowledge and with wisdom and say enough is enough. Let's turn this thing around. Let's get to some solutions. Let's legalize freedom in this country. Go ahead, John.
Okay, we're going to take a break here and then come back for the last segment. This is John Rappaport sitting in for Alex Jones with Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. We're talking about your freedom, our freedom, everybody's freedom, and what's at stake here in this global insanity. You can visit me at nomorefakenews.com, naturalnews.com for Mike Adams, the Health Ranger. Mike, in this last segment here, I think it'll be interesting to mention a little bit about celebrities. You know, back in the health freedom days of the early 90s, there were a lot of celebrities like James Earl Jones, Mel Gibson, Mariel Hemingway, Lindsay Wagner, who came out in favor of the freedom of the people to have their choice in whatever food they really wanted to eat, or milk to drink, or supplements to take. And now, all of a sudden, we don't see celebrities showing up in public speaking on behalf of freedom, as you're talking about. A whole change has occurred in a matter of a little over, 15, 20 years here. It's very strange to me.
There's so much pressure now, political pressure in Hollywood, that these celebrities have learned that when they speak out, they get punished financially. They lose roles in movies. Their careers go down the tubes. And it's only celebrities who have a lifetime of success that aren't afraid to speak out who are actually doing so. For example, Suzanne Summers, to her credit, has put out a book challenging the cancer industry. She interviewed complementary and alternative cancer doctors all across the country. I don't recall the title of that book at the moment, but you can search Suzanne Summers anywhere and find the book. And that was a really amazing, wonderful investigative work. And of course, she was attacked for doing that. There are others who are attacked for speaking out. And you're right, John, it's a shame that the political environment today favors those who stay silent, because that's exactly the opposite of what we need. We must speak out. And for those listening today too, freedom is not a spectator sport. You've got to take action or we will lose this republic very, very quickly.
Decentralizing freedom has a precedent. It has a program. It's a thing that can be done. To try to bring more power down locally, you see, from this top-heavy, gigantic colossus, all the way to the individual. And there are steps and there are organizations and there are things that you can explore here. This is not just, we're not just talking hot air here, folks. Mike put his finger on it. Legislate freedom. Doing that changes everything. And then more people begin to show up all of a sudden. They say, oh yeah, freedom, I forgot that. You know, I've been reading the newspapers for the last 15 years, and come to think of it, I've never seen the word individual with the word freedom next to it. Isn't that amazing? You know, where did that go? Yeah, well, we're bringing it back, folks. We're bringing it back.
Well, you think about the role that the government is trying to take now. It's the role of saving you from yourself, which was brilliantly illustrated in the South Park episode of the TSA, the Toilet Safety Administration. Brilliant. Because this one woman fell in the toilet, now everybody has to have toilet seatbelts. Well, we've got to stop thinking of the government as our savior. We've got to start thinking about the government as only one role being important: protecting our liberties and our rights. Life is dangerous. Driving in a car is dangerous. Downhill skiing is dangerous. We've got to stop thinking the government can save us from every little thing and start taking responsibility for our own lives and dealing with a little bit of danger. Hey, I drove through some water today, 3 feet of water flooding across my driveway to get here. Was that dangerous? Yeah, so what? I'm here anyway. But I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be part of this liberty effort.